Hey, what's up, y'all? And welcome to another Decode. And we're gonna start off doing Shallow Hal, the movie Shallow Hal, which is kind of cool. And yeah, it's awesome. Kind of in a relaxed setting right now. I don't really feel like sitting on the bench. So, that's my whole thing I'm nerding out on now. It's a new hobby. Is because obviously I left the mission. I went to try to family reconcile, and I just found there's just so much secret chambers within the Miller name, and then the M and the W. And so I decided to come back here and pick up something new, which was, I wanted to take a flashlight and go down the rabbit hole and try to map it out and then create some huge blueprint that's complete. So that's kind of my new mission right now, is to decode movies, get a normal job, be a minimalist. If destiny comes knocking on my door, life or death, answer it. If marriage is meant for me, I'm kind of just like, okay, but I'm not gonna chase it anymore because I didn't find it to begin with. So, so I picked up a new hobby, and hey, dude, it's working great. So Shallow Hal is a movie where this guy's dad is dying, and he's just like, son, it's all about the poontang. Find you a woman with a good ass. And so he goes out and he becomes real shallow, and he's hanging out with his friend, which is Jason Alexander, is the character of Mauricio. And then you have Jack Black, which is the character of Hal. So immediately, Jack Black represents Jack from Titanic, and then Mauricio represents Jack's friend. Jack's friend in Titanic's name was Fabricio. Mauricio, it's all part of the same kind of blueprint there. And so Shallow Hal for they're at a bar, right? And his dad tells him to get a woman with a booty. Reminds me of my dad. He used to always give me advice like that until the very end. And we just went across that. And so Hal ends up working for a company called JPS Funding. So it's a funding company, it has to deal with money, obviously. And it's obviously a huge skyscraping tower. You notice in Hollywood, main movies always have towers. John Wick, the Continental Tower, you have the tower heist. Everything is about a tower. There's a battle in the tower, there's transactions in the tower, there's promotions in the tower. RoboCop, there's people who get shot and fly out of the tower. I mean, all kinds of tower movements going on, right? So he works right there. So he got denied for his promotion, and so the first thing, he's in there with a meeting, which is, I guess, not the main boss, but he's with the boss, right? And he says, we decided to go with the woman because she's just a real entity. So Hal's like, well, what can I say? She's an entity, and you chose the entity. And so he didn't get the promotion, and a woman did, right? So they went with her, and they denied him. And so Shallow Hal gets in the elevator, and he's having a bad day. And then Tony Robbins, with big old giant, dude, compared to him, he's like 7 foot tall, and so, and then the elevator breaks, right? And so Hal gets all freaked out, and they sit down and they start talking about women. And, they start talking about women, and let me position myself comfortable here. All right. So they start talking about women, and they're broke down in this elevator together. And he's like, don't you think you're being a bit shallow with these women? And then so he's like, let me do something to help you. And so he puts this big old mitts on his head and says, devils come out, right on his forehead. And then he's like, what are you doing, man? And then he does some altercation on his mind. And it really makes him to where he sees the heart in people. So all of a sudden, the ugly chicks, the people who are nerdy, nice, smart, who don't have the club game, which is very few nowadays. I think most people are straight dirty with it. But so he starts seeing them as hot, right? And, so, oh yeah, and there was a crystal ball on that guy's desk too, whenever he got denied for a woman entity. And there was a crystal ball right there. And so they get in the elevator, and there's a symbol in front of the elevator, which is a cube, right? So there's a cube in front of the elevator, and then there's a littler cube inside the bigger cube, right? So there's two cubes. So 2 cubes, 2 people in the elevator, probably symbolic there. And oh yeah, he's all, aren't you the TV guru? You know, so he's like calls Tony Robbins a television guru. He's all, aren't you the TV guru? And so Hal shakes his hand, and he has two hands, and he's like, oh yeah. Hal grabs his hand, and he's like, whoa, look at the mitts on these. It's like grabbing a bunch of bananas. And so obviously, you know who pops in my head? A rose flower. You know that pops in my head immediately. And I did text her and apologize, by the way. And so the elevator breaks, and they are, sorry, people are texting me about money in Africa because, you know, probably someone, I don't know. So the elevator breaks, and they are in it for a hole together. He wants a celebrity type woman too. So when he's saying what kind of woman do you want, Tony does, he's talking about all these celebrities. He's like, well, I want the hands of this celebrity and this celebrity. And so when you look at that, it reminds me of Jim Carrey immediately in Truman Show. So when he ran into Laura or Fiji, what did he do? He started going in celebrity magazines, and he started trying to put together that woman using celebrities, right? And the same thing Hal did. He's like, he started mentioning a bunch of celebrities. I want her rack, her butt, and whatever. So nowadays, you can break it down into two principles. I was thinking too, I'll posit like, you know, because I used to be shallow too, because I was a, you know, but now I think if you have loyalty and respect in your relationship, it's going to go a long way. So I think it's, if you hold on to even a couple principles very well, you'll do very well. So Tony now, he even says to Hal, I know you have a great heart, right? So that's a huge thing. He's all, you have a big heart, right? So he kind of does, I would think some type of witchcraft on his mind. So he brought up, he's all, you're stuck in patterns, you know? And it's funny because, like, I dated this girl named Belinda in Las Vegas, and she said she studies patterns in men, and you know, and this kind of reminded me of her, you know, because I listen very well. You know, obviously, I think you all get that now. Probably a point where it kind of scares the shit out of you, but so, you know. He brought up patterns because of how he wants such a specific woman. It reminds me of the ad, you know, when I was living with Timmy in Bakersfield, they used to send me these, you're 5.5, you're a good guy and you got a good heart, but you're only 5.5. And then there would be another system of ads where it was saying, use this mind hack technique on girls and you'll get them. It reminded me of this right here, this movie, you know? And so, let's see here. California, where there's just like mine, the thing you can do to women to get them conversation, the movie. We just already talked about that. Oh, and when he was talking to Hal, he was like, I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're on a beach, you know, and you see a woman on the beach. And then, you know, he's touching his forehead when he's doing this. And I thought that was kind of cool. So this is very true. And true beauty does come from the inside. I think that I really believe corny is a sexy quality in a woman nowadays after being with a bunch of Jezebels my whole life. I think minimalism and corniness is freaking hot, you know, because everything else is played out, dude, to me anyway. I don't know about you, but it is. And so she hands him the pin, right? He meets this woman, so he leaves, and then he meets this woman that's, you're getting in a taxi, and she's hot, you know, and he's like, you want to share a cab? You know, oh, sure. And then the driver's driving, he's like, so you're here doing a model shoot? And then the driver looks back and goes, ugh, what? Because she was real ugly. Like later in the movie, she had bad teeth, brown teeth, and her hair was all like just beat up and stuff. And I thought she was still kind of pretty, but, you know, but I guess from what she was, totally different. You know, from what the witchcraft did and not, she was totally different. But her heart was awesome. So, you know, let's see here. Where was I at? Very true. Oh, yeah, and then she hands him the pin. He's all, can I get your number? She gives him a pin, and then he writes his information on her hand, right? And so information goes on her hand, and so Hal and his friend remind me of Jerry and George, because George is bald, and he's bald in this movie, but he has this, like, hairpiece, this sod he puts on there. And they're both kind of shallow, looking for both suck at relationships. I'll get, you know. So Bella and Hal She worked at a school, that girl, she worked at a school, the one he met, the hot one that's really ugly, fighting blindness. And Hal's like, oh, I once knew a deaf guy, and then the name Hal means, I looked it up, what's Hal even mean? It means a born leader, like born a king or born a leader or born some person in position. So the decoding journey has moved super fast at this point, I started realizing, but I'm handling the pressure better than I ever have to. The insecurities, the anxieties, all the rabbit hole. Sometimes when you're going through the rabbit hole, it's like a canyon, and you unlock these avenues of knowledge, and you have to like hang on. It's almost like you're cliff hanging, and you just have to catch your breath, and you go, oh my gosh. And it's like you go through these points, and I'll just be real. You kind of want to close your eyes, and you do go through points where you wish you could stop going down the rabbit hole and just like climb out and like not go down it again. But it's never going to happen, because once you get certain depths in there, you can't stop. I know I can't. So, it is what it is. So it's a mind warp. So how the woman in here that he meets too, guess her name? Her name is Rosemary, right? So it's Hal and Rosemary. So, and in this movie, she's real fat. She's a real chunky person, but then she gets skinny after Hal has that Tony Robbins mind warp, right? He sees the beauty and stuff, inner beauty, which she's like hot, because Gwyneth Paltrow and she's hot. So, she says, well, nothing, I'm waiting for, oh yeah, they're at a table, right? And they're eating lunch, and she orders a bunch of food. She's hungry. This girl is freaking hungry, man. She ordered like 3 cheeseburgers, chili cheese fries. I mean, talk about a hungry woman. I've had some women say I'm hungry, but I don't know if I buy them that much shit. And so he asks about her business. So what do you do for business? She's like, oh, I'm kind of waiting for something. I'm waiting for somebody to re-up, and then once they re-up, we can get things going. And that's so crazy, because I'm over here, and I've been saying that lately. I've been saying it's time to re-up. You know what I'm saying? And so Rosemary says that, I'm waiting for somebody to re-up. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on at this point? These are when you pause and you go, am I in a dream? Or is this really freaking happening, kind of thing? So, and so she's waiting for somebody to re-up. And that's interesting, because I'm in Illinois. I've been saying that too. And she's smarter than Hal. She knows bigger words, but he tries to be smarter. She seems like, and but she knows it, and she'll call him a smart ass and stuff. They have kind of like this cool flirtiness about him, which is kind of cool. And with words, he'll be like, she's all, do you mean this word? And she'll say it, and he's like, yeah. Alice stands up though. I mean, because whenever they leave, these people make fun of her weight. Oh yeah, and she's sitting in a chair, and all the legs of the chair broke. And in this movie, Rosemary's sitting on 2 seats, and both time it breaks. So there's a point where 2 seats break, almost like she wasn't meant to be sitting there or something, And I think so, because at the end of the movie, he can't pick her up because she's too heavy. She's like a robot. And then so she picks him up, and then she carries him to the car and sets him in the driver's seat, and then lets Hal drive, right? So that has symbolism in it too, all over the place. And let's see here. Oh yeah, 2 people, they say there's probably no food left in there. She ate it all, right? And Hal, he sees skinny woman, so he thinks they're talking about his little gut. So he goes in there, and he starts showing her off and going, look at that woman. And they look out, and it shows the fat version of her, and they're like, what the heck? But then he looks out there, and he sees the hot version of her. He's like, yeah, right? So it's kind of crazy. So, oh yeah, and when he came out, she's all, so what happened in there? And he's all, I'll just tell you like this. Hal 2 and the mole rats 0, right? And so he named a score. So Hal asked Rosemary for a number, and she was like, what do you mean? Like, she thought he just was being nice to her for a day or something. Like some people, I guess they'll go be nice to a fat person or ugly person or a man they don't like, and then they'll ditch them. They'll like give them a night of fun, and then they'll bounce. And then so he's all, what do you think what I mean? I want your PIN number and your money. You know, that's what he says, your PIN number and your money. And he's like, no, I want your phone number, right? And so her father, she mentions her father is the owner of a company. And then he's all, that's the company I work for. And she's like, yeah, that's my father. And he's like, so your father is my main boss, right? And so he's like super rich and very Irish guy. And so he runs into this girl, not knowing it was his daughter. He didn't know that. And so, he says, your father's my boss. And how long is name? Oh, yeah. And then so at this point, it switches to him and his friend talking about it. And they go past this hot dog stand. And the hot dog stand says, it's called Earth Dog. And it has the planet Earth and then dog, a hot dog on it, but it really means dog, like roo. So Hal's friend calls Rosemary too. He meets her because he's all, check this babe out. And he's all, which one? Right there. She's wearing pink too. And then he's like, is she behind the rhino? And he's like, what do you mean? And then he goes over there and he's like, introduced her. And then his friend's first word to her was, holy cow, right? Holy cow, and this reminds me of Israel, the holy cow and all that stuff in Revelation. So, and they're talking once again, and Hal's friend, he's popping up, and Rosemary and them says, yeah, Hal, she takes the whole bakery, right? And so that's symbolic too, right? I remember I've had some interpretations of bakeries and stuff. So the real Rosemary loves children too. I've talked to Rose and she says she hates kids, and then one of them, so this one's kind of, confusing a little bit. It's like there's two. It's like there's a counterfeit. There's like a red flower and a white flower or something. So she ends up going to this hospital of sick children, and she likes to make them laugh and spend time with them. And then so Hal goes in there, but he sees their hearts. So he don't really see their infection. He don't see the sickness, right? It's like he looks past it almost, and you can't see it. Like if somebody was infected, he wouldn't see it. He'd see their heart, And so she really loves children. And so Rosemary calls this nurse in there. This nurse comes in there, and she's an old hag, bro. She looks like she's 85 and ugly, mean looking. And all of a sudden she's being mean. Get these kids back in the bed. But later you see that nurse go on a date with another one of Hal's friends, and that girl's actually freaking hot. Like it shows the version of her when Hal's not in the car. It's like Hal can reveal the good and the ugly in people, right? And the ones that say they're pretty, he'll say, bullshit, you're ugly. And the ones that are ugly will look pretty. And so, when he leaves, then Rosemary's talking to her. Rosemary's her overweight self. And then the nurse is pretty hot. Like if you look at her, she's like a 10. You'd be like, dang, she's got it going on or whatever. And so, but then when Hal comes back, she's back to the old lady smoking cigarettes. And so when the nurse leaves, he's all, should we get the kids back in bed? And then the Rosemary says, no, don't mind sourpuss. So she calls the nurse sourpuss. And I thought this was very crazy, because I've had dreams about some tainted vaginas. And she calls her a sourpuss. And I'm like, what the? But then I'm wondering, it's just who knows how deep this rabbit hole goes. I mean, you guys probably can know more than me because you've been gaming me for so long. And you're probably having fun because I'm figuring it out a little bit. And you're like, oh my gosh, she's figuring this out. But so she calls the nurse sourpuss. Maybe her vagina is tainted too with some disease. I don't know. So Rosemary, she loves going to the hospital and visiting children. And then the first doctor that comes in that knows her real well is an Indian guy. He's like, Rosemary, hey, how are you? And kind of reminds me of Jamie. I remember one time this girl I dated took me to City of Hope, which is this cancer society, this huge thing. And they have these trees outside, right? Where all these kids hang their cancer wishes on trees, because a lot of them have cancer and they die. And so they write their last wishes on trees and what they want and all that stuff. And so, that was very interesting. And so he's driving a Jeep Cherokee too, which reminds me of Timmy. He's like, I want a Jeep Cherokee or something. Because, he kind of selfishly knows things, but he doesn't ever talk to me, And so that's why we don't really get along. This is how I like to talk. I like to express myself. I don't like to bullshit and play games. I'm tired of playing games, but he's kind of like more on a, he only wants you when you can, needs you the most. You're going to do something for him. And so that's why me and my family is hard to click. And it kind of reminded me of that, because I don't know what he means. But then when I watch movies and see all these hints, I'm like, huh, duh, right? So whenever Rosemary and Hal, they have sex for the first time, right? She's taking off her underwear and she looks hot. Obviously in the movie, it shows her butt and it was hot. I'm not gonna lie. She's got a body on her, and yeah, it looked good. So, and then she throws her panties to him, and they're like you can probably put it in the front of a hood of a car, like a bra. And he's like, get over here, Houdini. And then they end up having sex, and it was great. They loved each other. And so she leaves, and his apartment number is 420, which is like, I think, Hitler's birthday or something. So that was kind of like, you see all these numbers like that. And he has a neighbor who was a woman, and he really desired her. She was like this hot neighbor that lives next door. Her number is 421, and she keeps blowing him off, right? And so let's see, she's right next door. And so she lived right next door. The number's 421. This kind of brings me to the movie Bedazzled, where Elliot messed with Allison. She kept cheating on him, all the wishes sucked. They failed. And then she didn't even like him at the end. But then he goes home, and then his next door neighbor's like a twin version of Elliot, or twin version of Allison. And she's like, you're the boy that moved in next door, right? And then they hit it off. This kind of reminds me of her. And which was kind of crazy, right? And he was wearing a t-shirt called Push Stars. It said Push Stars, almost like push forward or something. So in the beginning of the movie, there was a promotion on the table too, and Hal missed out. They chose the entity woman over him. So he just kept on working, but then he meets this woman. They start dating, and then his father, once he grows a connection with Rosemary's father, he actually promotes him to work as his personal assistant. He's all, you're going to work directly for me, right? And so he puts him in a position. And the father thinks he's kind of doing this on purpose just to get close to him. So he was going to allow it. He's all right, I'll give you a spot, but you don't have to hang out with my daughter anymore. Don't bullshit. The gig's up. And then he kind of, because Hal's looking at a hottie, dude. He don't see the big old rolls. He's like, so he looks in the kitchen, and the dad looks at a chunky chick, and then Hal looks in the kitchen, and he sees a big old sexy ass and perfect figure. And so it's like, what the heck? And it's like, okay. And so he's just like, so he snaps on the guy and says, you know what? You people suck. And then the other dude's like, whoa. So then the other man thinks this guy actually really loves his daughter's chunkiness, but Hal can't see that, right? And so it's just a trip, man, when you can put these puzzle pieces together like this, right? It reminded me of a thing when I was at work in California. My boss, we were talking about Trump, and he's all, yeah, well, Trump just needs that guy who can relate with him, And reminds me some reason of that. So the friend of Hal is stalking the tower too, because so the friend missed out and chose it. Yeah. So the friend is tired of this, because he's going to Hal and he's like, all the chicks you're hanging around with is ugly. One of them I thought was a man. He's all, Vicky? He's like, I was calling him Vic. And and so, and it was called a trans, he's like, do you got anything to take the trans away? And then they're like, oh yeah, there's a code word to take the trans away. And I was like, oh dang. And so, he's stalking this tower, right? The George guy, Fabricio, and he's waiting by the doors. And then finally Tony Robbins comes out, and there's a sign on 2 stories above. And then there's a sign right out the door that says Anthony Robbins Live, 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 right? Like live. Here we go. And so there was the signs hanging there. So I thought that was kind of crazy. And so he ends up breaking the curse. Shallow Hal wants a gal, like he calls him, and once you say that, it breaks it, right? So Rosemary's having dinner with Hal and says her boyfriend invited her to go feed thousands of people in another country, because that's what she likes to do. She likes to go do these things where she feeds kids and water and food, and right now I'm like, oh, this is why a bunch of people from Africa and around the world are telling me to give money to the orphans and stuff. And I'm just like, why would they ask me all this stuff? I ain't got any money. You know, it's because they see a bigger picture than me. They see all this game that I don't see yet, you know, or this woman I've never met yet. I don't know. But I'm done looking. And so, I mean, I'll wonder while I'm looking through the rabbit hole, but I'm not physically out there like, where are you? I think it's kind of like, whatever. But, you know, so let's see, invited him, a few thousands and stuff. So he's kind of tripping out, you know, and thinking that they're going to get back together because he sees her ex-boyfriend and sees him in his heart form. So he sees him as a good-looking pretty boy. And then Lee Boy as this like pretty Hawaiian guy. And he's like, what the heck? So 2 times in the movie, Rosemary's sitting on a chair and it breaks. This is where the second one happened. And but you know, there's symbolic meaning to that. She's sitting on 2 chairs and it breaks while she's sitting on it. All right. And so maybe she's like running in a chair that somebody else is supposed to be running, or maybe the time of her chair seating is over with and somebody else is going to do it, right? This was at a 4-star restaurant. And then Hal, whenever he's walking to the hostess, like remember Taylor Swift, she says, I will be your host for the evening, right? There's this blue shirted hot lady, like when it shows Hal's version. So at this point, the movie's kind of, you want to fall in love with it, but then now you're like, oh, there's some sinister stuff to it. Like the pretty hostess looked like a chick, man. I mean, when Hal walks over there, she's a hot chick. I mean, if I was with her, I'd hit on her and be like, damn, you're pretty, you're hot. But then he goes to the bathroom and all of a sudden his friend calls and says, Shallow Hal wants a gal. And he's like, what? You're crazy. Hangs up the phone. And then he turns around and that blue hottie that was a host turned into a dude. And it was a tall guy. And then Hal's like, where's that host I was talking to? And he's like, honey, I'm the only host here tonight, right? And he's like, what? And then he starts to go back to his seat, and all of a sudden he sees the big version of Rosemary eating his food. And he's like, who's that robust woman in my seat? And she's eating her, now my clam casino, right? And then he's like, are you okay, right? Because the guy's like, you're with her. And then he's like, what, I am? And so he starts tripping out, right? And I thought that was funny because now it reveals the gift is kind of whacked. Like he saw a transgender, but see, he saw their heart and who they wanted to be. So a man wanted to be a woman. And so Hal saw the woman, even though that person was really a man. And that's where I was kind of like, well. And so he's talking to the front desk lady. We know that part. So it was hypnotism pretty much. So this is a transgender 101. And then he says to the waiter, he's like, seems like my girlfriend has a jinx. She's jinxed when it comes to furniture. Talking about the broken chairs. You know, so obviously I thought about Aaron's furniture store and stuff like this because of the furniture. And yeah. So it's like he had a vision season where he can see all this stuff and then it went away. And so when he sees their inner beauty, the good and the bad, and then it's taken away. And then now he's at this thing where he has to try to fall in love with Rosemary in his shallow character, you know, like with all of her flaws, weight, or whatever she's struggling with, right? See if his love is still there. So after the trans is taken away, he sees everything for what it is. And then his friend takes him back to his apartment. And this is where it gets very interesting for me. So I'm watching this movie and there's 3 posters, you know, like where you put pictures in frames. There's 3 frames, and guess what are all loaded in those big old posters? Dollar bills. He has a frame over here with dollar bills, and he has 2 on that wall with dollar bills. RoboCop, I'll buy that for $1. The insurance commercial on Geico, the lizard G, and the girl's trying to catch the dollar, and he's like, you got to be quicker than that. And she goes to grab it. You got to be quicker than that. And she, you know what I'm saying? And so at this point, I'm about Rosa overload, Rosie, Rosemary, whatever, you know, because in Vegas, it was hard because I met a Rosa. There's a Rosa at the Damn Plasma Center, the Rosie at the Eagle Concrete. It's like it followed me everywhere I went. And I'm like, And so I texted her, and I did an apology. Here, let me see what I said. I'll let you know what I said. You already know what I said, but you know what I'm saying. Baby mama, okay, well, that's your decision, Josh. I hope you enjoy it. Wish you the best. Yeah, let's write her back, okay? Thanks, Gina. Your one-liners are always so great and fill me with so much joy. Have a good night. Talk to you later. She's kind of stubborn. So I did write her. I said, I was like, hey, sorry for giving you $1. I said, I was watching this movie called Shallow Hal, and he has these posters in his apartment with dollar bills on them. And he was dating this woman named Rosemary in this movie. And I said, I've been letting go of some anger and some shit I'm going through. And I said, I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings. Hurt you or your feelings, all right? And then I told her, it took me a couple seconds to get my shit together. And I was like, and I'm re-upping on a mission right now. I said, I'm not trying to bother you. I've been decoding movies a lot, and Hollywood makes a lot of movies about your name and me and all kinds of other things. And I just wanted to break the silence and apologize to you. And then the last sentence, I said, I can totally be a dick sometimes. I thought that was kind of funny, right? So, yeah. So that's what I said, because I couldn't help it. After watching this movie, I'm like, whoa, man. And we put the dollar bills on the things. And when Rosemary comes to his door, his friend puts this Vaseline over his eyes, right? And then she answers the door and she's all blurry. It's like he couldn't see the full vision. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm sick. I can't see, So that was kind of crazy when I saw that point, And, oh, yeah, and the friend says, she's all, what are you sick with? She's yelling through the door. And then the bald guy says, he's sick with CC, right? And he just says CC, whatever that means. So Hal goes to confront Ralph because he heard they were back together from her dad. And he looked at Ralph and he's all, you better not hurt her. If you hurt her, I will pounce on you like a tiger pounces on a deer. He's all, I'll rip you to shreds. And so the tiger resembles obviously number 2. You can see this in Amazon stores. They have a white tiger on all their stuff that's over a bunch of nations and stuff. And so lions are usually number 1. Tigers are number 2. Panthers number 3. They do operate in this type of stuff in the kingdom of the world, right? So pounce on you like a tiger. And so you got Ralph, Fabricio, Lee-Boy, and they all pull up to Rosemary's house. And he's getting out and says something. He said, pray for me because this is crazy. And then Fabricio says, crazy is all you got. And then Ralph says, amen to that, right? And then the bald guy ends up having a tail. So he goes to Hal and he's like, I'm shallow too. And he's all, why? He's all, I got a tail. And so he shows Hal, and his bone on his spine is like this much longer. And it looks like a dog tail. And then it wags when it's nervous or excited. Like he was walking with a woman at a party and they showed his back view and it's going like a little dog. And so at the end of the movie, obviously Rosemary kicks the doors open. She's holding Hal and puts him in the driver's seat, and they take off and ride in the sunset. That is the decoding of Rosemary and the movie Shallow Hal. And the reason why is because it motivated me with this, because I was watching, some reason Tony Robbins popped in my head because I watched the movie The Game, which is about Nicholas, right? And then Tony Robbins' name is Anthony Robbins. And then you have Tony's Pizza in my city. And then you have, like in Truman Show when he's taking her at the beach. So check this out. He says, I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're on the beach with a beautiful woman there. And then imagine Truman Show when he's on the beach and they're laughing and joking. And what does he say? Tony, I'll take a large pizza with extra plankton, please. It's almost like the elevator scene that he was telling Hal was what they used in the Truman Show. So imagine Hal closing his eyes, he's imagining the Truman Show scene. He's dancing on the beach, he watching her in her sweater, and then he calls out and says, Tony, we'll take an extra large pizza with extra plankton, thank you, right? So this is what goes through my head, dude, and it's because it's for a reason. And then that's the good side of the Tony. But then there's this evil side. When you look at John Wick, chapter, I think 2 or 3 or something, he's in this library and he goes to the book and he pulls out the rosary, right? And then when he's pulling out the rosary and he has a picture of his wife in there, it goes a picture of his wife, and then he pulls the picture of his wife, and the next piece item is the rosary. So wife, rosary, and then his marquee, his mark, right? And then all of a sudden you hear a dude reading about virtue and knowledge, and it's this giant, freaking giant, man. And he looks just like Tony Robbins, younger version. And then all of a sudden he's waiting on the hour to be up because he wants to kill John Wick for the money. And so then John ends up fighting this giant and he kills him. He breaks his neck off. Quack! You know, literally, that guy's neck was gone. And so he kills the giant. And then so I was like, what the heck? And then you have Meet the Millers where they go to Mexico and they fight a giant too. And so I thought that was kind of crazy. And so that's what led me, because I thought of Shallow Hal. I thought of Tony Robbins and him in the elevator. And then I started thinking of The Matrix, where Morpheus jumps, he jumps over the building. And then when you look at the movie The Game in 1997, Douglas's dad, which is Nicholas in the movie, he's on top of a building and jumps, right? And then you have Nicholas at the top of the building, and then he jumps. And you have Morpheus at the top of the building, he jumps. You have Neo at the top of the building, and he jumps, right? And so it's kind of crazy. And that's what led me to decode this. So I hope you all like it and enjoy it. And keep going down that rabbit hole, y'all.